People, welcome to the Newspaper Breakdown. It is the 2nd of February. I hope our weekends were all survivable. We'll start with the culture war horseshit story of the fucking week with Penguin Books have been facing criticism for alleged alterations made in latest editions of Roald Dahl books, critics claiming censorship. Some passages relating to weight, mental health, gender and race were altered by the publisher. Start off with race. Fine. Right. Although I do always have the thought of you have to show us at our worst, so that we know as people we can improve, we can get better. I do not believe that you're going to read Roald Dahl and then start being an anti-Semite, even though Roald Dahl was. You're not going to go, well, Roald Dahl thought this. Because if we are at the point where you believe that we need to alter books to get rid of all of the shit that's in them, I would personally start with every religious text that there's ever been. I would rewrite all of them. Get rid of them all. I mean, Roald Dahl would be quite low down, wouldn't it? Really. If you want to get rid of racism in words, I'd suggest going through the majority of laws would be a fun start. Because if you want to write inclusive and accessible stuff, write it. That's what you should be doing. You should be writing it, not trying to alter the past, because you have to learn from that. You always have to learn from the past. You have to now write the inclusive and accessible stuff. And in 100 years' time, we're going to have this same fucking argument, because the stuff that you write now that is inclusive and accessible, in 100 years' time won't be. 100 years' time, it will be you're using words that you should never use. If we ever get rid of the class system, and you'll write on a little working class boy, I mean, are you calling him working class? Something that is a derogatory term. Something that is putting someone into a fucking box, and you're calling him working class. You're praising the fact that he's working class. You scummy fuck. That's how it's going to be. Because we always move to now. It's why the concept of good and evil is subjective. It's because the timing of it is so important. What can be good now will be evil in 100 years. What is evil now was fine 100 years ago. It's all subjective. The difference is that at this moment, you believe that you get to decide what people read. That's it. And removing the ability for people to see how we were, to take away the view of that we have improved as people, to see the cold light of day that throughout history we've been bastards, and the small little bit of improvement that we've made is in front of us to see. I think that's wrong myself. But at the same time, who the fuck am I? I mean, Dahl was a massive anti-Semite. No one's rewriting his fucking words, are they? Because you just get rid of it. If you want to research Dahl, go, well, look at what he wrote, look at who he was. Who knows, eh? Back to more fun subjects. New research from the Independent Food Aid Network found that nearly 90% of food banks surveyed reported an increased demand in December 22 and January 23 compared with a year earlier. Half of the 85 organisations that responded said that if demands grew any more, they will either have to cut support or turn people away. We now have a record number of households that are using food banks, with the Trussell Trust, which is the UK's biggest provider, expecting this winter to have been the busiest ever. Between April and September alone last year, it distributed 1.3 million emergency food parcels, which is a third more than the same period in 2021 and over 50% more than pre-pandemic. Even despite inflationary pressures easing, the cost of living crisis is still raging, with food inflation up at 16.7%. Take into account that inflation, just inflation, is what, 10.1%? So you see just how much higher food inflation is than inflation. Cost of gas is nearly 130% higher than a year ago. Add that into, of course, wages falling in real terms, means that food banks are struggling to meet demands from people who are working as well. And this is an important thing to constantly remember, because we love this continual discussion in this country that, I tell you what they need, a fucking job. All they need is a job. We've got like 2/3 of everyone on benefits are working. What you need is to pay people more, give them more fucking hours. It's why like Corbyn's £15 an hour is a lovely idea, and something along those lines should work. Although, of course, if you have a look at the £15 an hour, you have to take into account that the minimum hour, or the average hourly pay in this country, is something like £13.60. So if you're moving the minimum hourly wage to £15, you're dragging fucking everyone up. Not just poor people, the middle class is everyone up. You have to really take that into fucking account. It's more hours that you need, really. You need to have cost of living and minimum wage into the living wage. A minimum wage into the living wage, certainly. A little bit up more would be always fun. But more hours. Because you can be paid a fucking £1 million a day, but if you only get paid fucking once every 25 years, you're fucked. You understand? It's a bit of an overstatement, but you understand the premise. And a third of the independent food banks has said that benefit sanctions and deductions were a driving factor, with many food banks also reporting issues with burnout among their staff and volunteers, because it is a domino effect of shit. I've said it once, I've said it a million times, the fact that we have a food bank shows society is fucked. So this is a sad story on something that shouldn't be there. It's fucking madness. Big Brother Watch has released a report into the government's 5 anti-fake news units, and how the original mission of countering disinformation has shifted quickly to countering dissent across the UK. An expected thing when when any government gets involved in trying to stop disinformation. Really, it's just it is another knock-on effect. You start giving people power, and you give them too much power, and they will always use it to fuck people over. Any comment criticising the government by everyone from Keir Starmer, David Davis, academics from the University of Oxford, University College of London, journalists including Peter Hitchens and Julia Hartley-Brewer. They'd all been analysed. It's an interesting, with their report, it's very interesting, because having these names together, from Starmer to Davis to Hitchens and Julia Hartley Brewer, they are such a big, wide range, because if these 5 units are there to counter disinformation, I 100% see why they're looking at the likes of Peter Hitchin and Julia Hartley Brewer, because they constantly spread lies. COVID lies, fucking climate bullshit, Brexit bullshit. All they do is lie. Putting them in the same level as even Starmer and David Davis. David Davis, of course, lies out of his hole, but he's a member of Parliament. You more expect him. Then the academics of the University of Oxford, and you're going after academics. We do not like that. We should not like that. It's not right, and we shouldn't have the government analysing journalists. But we should have a regulator that stops constant bullshit going out, really. The unit's targeted speech, including criticism of government's pandemic response, as well as journalists' criticism of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and MPs' criticism of NATO. Again, very dodgy, remarkably dodgy. It's fine if you're against NATO. It's fine if you thought that our absolute fuck up that was withdrawn from Afghanistan was done badly. The government should not be using its power to keep a fucking list of stuff like this. It is fundamentally against freedoms. Soldiers from the Army's 77th Brigade, which is tasked with non-lethal psychological warfare, collected tweets from British citizens posting about COVID-19 and passed them to the government. That's a concern. Again, this is a concern. This is one of those, and I think it's a major problem with people as a whole, is especially in this country, is we love to talk about our freedoms being taken away, but we're never specific, and we always ignore when it's actually happening. Like freedom of movement over Brexit, that was quite literally our freedoms being taken away. That was it. That is the literal definition of removing freedoms. We had freedom of movement, and it was taken away. Of course, the government kept on saying, well, we are going to stop their freedom of movement. And because we're so stupid, because we shouldn't be allowed with a fucking toaster and a bath, just in case, we went, oh, it's good. Get rid of their freedoms. Yeah, well done to us. We're too stupid as people, frankly. We had content, the government has removed content from social media, with working alongside social media companies to remove content which is dodgy, and they front organisations aimed at minorities, and they were set up to spread government propaganda in the UK. All in all, as you would expect. Government's dodgy, all governments are dodgy, all governments do stuff like this. It's nice to know about it. The plus point, if you were to look at it, is that Big Brother Watch haven't been shut down. So you take that win, that we are still in a point with our press freedoms where we are able to point out the government trying to take away our freedoms. Weird, but good. Anyway, free school meals will be offered to all primary school pupils across London for a year, under plans by Sadiq Khan to tackle what he has said was a failure by ministers to step up support during the cost of living crisis. It will come in from September, saving about £440 for every child and benefit around 270,000 children. The Mayor's office claimed hundreds of thousands of school children live in poverty but are not eligible for free school meals because of the government's restrictive eligibility criteria. To be eligible, households on universal credit must make less than £7,400 after tax, not including benefits. Which is just fucking tiny. But the idea that you make fucking £7,500 and you're fucking fine, it is ridiculous. It goes along the same lines as the UN and World Bank number for poverty, which is you're only in poverty if you earn less than $1.90 a day. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous made up fucking figure that's just there for arbitrary reasons. Makes it seem like everything's fucking fantastic, but it's not, and we all know it's not. But well done to Deep Calm. Good on him. That's a nice story. Once again, we shouldn't need it. We should be getting free school meals for children anyway, because they're children. But at least you've got someone attempting to do something, even if it's only for a year. It will help people, and that's nice. We've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 stories left. So probably a bit of a longer one. Sorry about that. Ministers have proposed law changes that will see the most dangerous domestic abusers put on the violent and sex offenders register. That will see them being more closely monitored by the police. Such offenders will also face being electronically tagged under measures being piloted in 3 UK areas at the moment. For the first time, police will be required to treat violence against women and girls as a national threat. This means it should be given the same priority as serious organised crime, terrorism and child abuse. In 2021, 2.4 million adults in England and Wales experienced domestic abuse, with 3/4 of them being women. It's one of those things you read and you're there going, why has it just happened? Like, it hasn't been getting fucking worse over time. In the sense, like, we weren't treating women better in like the fucking 60s, and now we're at a point going, oh shit, how have we gone backwards like this? No, we've always been treating women shit, yet only now are we seeing that it's a national threat. It's weird. It's fucking. We should have to put more in. That's why I say, like make men wear bells or something. Have your fucking mother behind you at all times. I cannot see how we get to a point where you're fucking beating women. It makes no fucking sense to me. There's a wonderful long bit about from Bill Burr about the idea that there's no reason to hit a woman. He said, no reason. It's a fantastic bit by one of the best ever comedians. He does say, well, I wouldn't, because you don't. But there's fucking people who do. Need to do more. And the problem is, you're getting the police. The police are fucking part of the problem, aren't they? We all know this. Anyway, if you are in a relationship where you are being abused, there are many options, including phone calls, which is like Ask for Annie, ANI. That's a very good scheme that's been set up. There are options for you to be able to discreetly say stuff, and if that's a possibility for you, then do it, because no one deserves to be You should only be hit if you're into like BDSM and it gives you a thrill. The rest of the time, no. And there's financial abuse and emotional abuse, and they're also, once again, that should only be consent. If you get like a thrill of being sexually, financially dominated, or fuck knows how that works. Christ. So just words now, innit? Words in an order. Anyway, final two stories. Hardcore punk brand and capitalist giant Brewdog plans to sell its adequate beer to human rights violating China. Punk bitches, punk. Recently, Brewdog lost its status as a ethical certified B Corp after complaints over its treatment of workers. Lovely little reminder for everyone that Brewdog isn't a punk company. It's not there for the good of the country. It is a pile of shit. It is a capitalist organisation that has all of the morality of a capitalist organisation. And everyone who bowed down at how fucking punk and how good they are, you're fucking idiots. You are the same people who fall for every con out there, be it Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, Mary Kondo, the idea of happiness, all of those made up things, all of those fucking cons, Avon. Final story anyway. Kenyan Senator Gloria Oroba has faced vicious online hate campaign after being asked to leave a Senate session halfway through after she protested against period poverty. She did this by wearing that's it. I wrote clothing, but I crossed the T. I crossed the L instead of the T. So I was looking at it going, what the fuck? Anyway, the senator wore clothing stained with fake menstrual blood. Her colleagues claimed that this was violating the House dress code. Orobi, who's the nominated Senate leader, is campaigning for free sanitary towel provisions and is planning to introduce a bill in the coming months. Fantastic. She's fucking brilliant. She already sounds brilliant. The incident prompted debate about period stigma and access to menstrual products. Number of women, as well as rights and menstrual health organisations, rallied behind her for her bold and powerful advocacy. She was, of course, targeted by severe cyberbullying and threats of sexual violence by tedious, small, fucking diseases that claim to be men. If you want to talk about fucking real men, by the way, because we love this fucking Andrew Tate and fucking Peterson and every little teeny incel fuckknuckle. A real man doesn't shit on this type of stuff. A real man is there for people. A real man is strong, is fucking emotionally, mentally fucking stable, isn't there trying to push up fucking pump the irons because you do not own a fucking personality. There's a touch of kindness, there's protecting your family, there's not being a pile of human shit. There's being there for fucking people. That is my consideration of being a fucking man, not going to the gym because you're scared of your penis size, or telling people to clean their room and you can only give up smoking if there's a god because your fucking daughter's trying to drug you. Tedious fucking cunts. All of this, she's advocating for women to get a fundamental human right. And men are so fucking scared that the idea of equality would mean that you'd have to improve as a person, that you attack a fucking woman for trying to do good. You scummy bastards. Kenya has seen extreme incidents of period shaming, including in 2019 when a 14-year-old girl killed herself after she was shamed by a teacher who was on her first period. Ministry of Health figures suggest only 65% of women and girls in urban areas and 46% in rural areas had access to disposable menstrual pads. More than half cannot afford monthly menstrual products, with almost 20% turning to homemade options. This is just fucking... It's fucking weird, isn't it? It is weird. If I wanted to be a prick at this point, I would point out that it's... No, I won't. I'll leave that for a different, maybe a stand-up bit. Anyway, this is longer than normal, so I'll catch you tomorrow.